Mark Cuban just sold most of his Bitcoin, and honestly, a few years ago that headline would have absolutely crushed the market. But this time, Bitcoin barely blinked. According to recent interviews, Cuban said he sold most of his Bitcoin because he became disappointed with how it behaved during periods of geopolitical tension and dollar weakness. He originally viewed Bitcoin as a better version of gold, but changed his mind after watching gold rally while Bitcoin struggled during recent Iran-related market volatility. Now here is what makes this story interesting. Mark Cuban is not some random celebrity jumping into crypto for attention. He has actually had a long history with Bitcoin and crypto overall. Over the years, Cuban publicly supported Bitcoin as a hedge against inflation, compared it favorably to gold, invested in crypto companies, backed Ethereum-based projects, experimented with NFTs, and even accepted crypto payments through the Dallas Mavericks organization. At one point, Cuban was one of the loudest billionaire voices supporting the idea that Bitcoin could become a serious global financial asset, which is why this latest shift is getting so much attention. Now, according to Cuban, the main reason he sold was simple. Bitcoin did not behave the way he expected during recent macro stress. Instead of acting like a safe haven hedge, while the dollar weakened and geopolitical fear increased, Bitcoin traded more like a risk asset. Meanwhile, gold surged higher. And honestly, I actually think his criticism is fair, because right now Bitcoin clearly does still trade heavily with broader risk sentiment. War headlines hit, oil spikes, liquidity tightens, and Bitcoin often sells off alongside stocks and other speculative assets. That is reality, but at the same time, I think a lot of people are misunderstanding what phase Bitcoin is actually in right now, because Bitcoin may not fully behave like digital gold yet, but it also is not the same speculative internet asset it was 10 years ago either. It is somewhere in the middle. And honestly, that transition phase is probably going to be messy. Now here is the part I think matters most. Even after selling most of his Bitcoin, Cuban did not suddenly say crypto is dead. He still appears more optimistic about Ethereum's long-term utility, and historically, he has repeatedly emphasized that blockchain technology itself is not going away. And honestly, I think that is important context people are missing, because one billionaire changing his portfolio allocation does not suddenly erase what Bitcoin has already accomplished. Bitcoin still has ETF infrastructure, institutional participation still exists, governments are actively discussing crypto regulation, and despite recent volatility, Bitcoin is still trading around levels that would have sounded absolutely insane just a few years ago. That matters. Now personally, I actually think Bitcoin's current behavior makes sense for where the market is today. Bitcoin is becoming increasingly integrated into the global financial system, which means it now reacts to macro liquidity, geopolitics, interest rates, and investor risk appetite much more heavily than before. That is not necessarily weakness. Honestly, it may actually be part of Bitcoin maturing into a larger global asset over time. And if Bitcoin eventually does become a true long-term macro hedge decades from now, the path there probably was never going to look perfectly clean. Now, at the same time, while long-term Bitcoin adoption keeps expanding, infrastructure and scalability conversations around the ecosystem are also becoming more important. That is part of why projects like Bitcoin Hyper have been getting attention recently. Not financial advice, obviously, but Bitcoin Hyper is currently priced around 0.0136806 and has already been featured across CoinMarketCap, 99 Bitcoins, Bitcoin Magazine, and other crypto publications. The project focuses on Bitcoin scalability and usability, which honestly becomes a much bigger conversation if Bitcoin continues integrating deeper into mainstream finance over time. And personally, during volatile markets like this, I also think security and flexibility matter more than ever. That is why many crypto users prefer secure multi-chain wallets like the Best Wallet app, rather than relying entirely on centralized platforms during uncertain conditions. Because in crypto, being able to control your assets actually matters. So bringing it all together, I honestly do not think the biggest takeaway here is that Mark Cuban sold Bitcoin. I think the bigger takeaway is that Bitcoin has now become large enough, political enough, and connected enough to the global financial system that even billionaire investors are debating what Bitcoin's true role actually is. And honestly, that conversation alone shows how far Bitcoin has already come.